Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning. First of all, I would like to apologize for not able to make a live presentation this morning due to a very tight schedule. This is a pre-recorded presentation that I managed to do yesterday. If you have questions after this presentation, please feel free to contact me via my email address. I will put it on the screen later at the end of my presentation. So before we start, I would like to thank to Malaysian Society for Automatic Control Engineers, MACE, and Center for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics, Cairo, UTM, for giving me an opportunity to share some of my research works in this Facebook Live platform. Let me first introduce myself. I am Shahri Rizal bin Tasjo from Micro and Nano Electronic Research Group, Faculty of Electronic Engineering Technology, University Malaysia Perlis. I was the Dean of School of Micro Electronic Engineering, University Malaysia Perlis before, starting from 15th of September 2020. About 2 weeks ago, the final stage of organizational restructuring at University Malaysia Perlis has taken place. So, School of Microelectronic Engineering and School of Computer and Communication Engineering, along with some academic units from other schools and departments. So we have been put under one roof, and now we become a new faculty known as the Faculty of Electronic Engineering Technology. And now I'm no longer as the dean. Okay. Here in Micro and Nano Electronic Research Group, we involved in various research areas. This includes high-speed electronic devices, MEMS, advanced electronic materials, and so on. We also collaborated with local and overseas institutions. One of our staff is currently attached to Silterra Malaysia Sdn Bhd, a wafer foundry company. This is for research project in MEMS area. Another staff is currently attached with the University of Glasgow, Scotland, involving research project in gallium nitride based HEMS. Me myself currently has a collaboration with the University of Manchester, United Kingdom, under Newton Ungku Omar research grants on a project that I will explain later in this presentation. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about terahertz imaging using nanodiode rectifier for public security. Let me put my presentations on this on the screen. Share. Okay, so my presentations today is on the terahertz imaging using nanodiode rectifiers for public security. Basically, this project is partly the continuation of my PhD research back in 2012. Okay, so the outline of my talk would be, firstly, we are going to talk about the properties and applications of terahertz wave. Then a little bit on the terahertz imaging approach or techniques. After that, it followed by the introduction to self-switching diode, or in the short form we call it as SSD. So SSD is a novel nanodiode that has been utilized as rectifiers in this work for producing terahertz image. Then after that, we look at a little bit on the theoretical part of the SSD under the topic of nonlinear device analysis. Then it followed by some results and discussions before we conclude. Next, we look at the properties and application of terahertz wave. This is the terahertz region. So basically, it lies between millimeter wave and also infrared in the electromagnetic spectrum. So the frequency range is between 100 gigahertz to 10 terahertz. This is for terahertz wave, from 100 gigahertz to 10 terahertz. And then the wavelength is between 30 micrometer to 3 millimeter. Okay, 30 micrometer to 3 millimeter. And the photon energy is between 0.4 milli electron volts and 40 milli electron volts. Okay, so basically, if you can see here, there's a lot of applications in other spectrum. For example, in millimeter wave, in microwave, in radio wave. So you can see a lot of applications. Also in on the other side, in infrared, visible light, ultraviolet, and X-rays. So that you have a lot of established application. But for terahertz wave in this region, in the last few decades, there's a lot of research going on to produce and establish applications for terahertz region. So last time we call it as a terahertz gap, because there's less applications being employed in this region. But now there's a lot of research going on for the last few decades, and I think in fact we have some commercialized products for terahertz applications. Okay, so next is the properties of the terahertz wave. Okay, one of the main properties is that the terahertz radiation is able to penetrate most dielectrics. Okay, this includes fabrics, papers, plastics, and so on. However, metallic objects will reflect terahertz radiation. Okay, so metallic object will reflect. Hence, the good thing is it can be utilized in many applications. For example, we can identify hidden metallic objects underneath clothes, or inside closed box, for example, and so on. So this is the application that we can use based on this property. In fact, another useful property is that terahertz wave is non-ionizing, since its photon energy is much less than X-ray. You know, X-ray can be very harmful to our body, but for terahertz wave, because of a low photon energy, so it will not harm to your body. Okay, so terahertz wave are safe to be frequently used on human screening, for example, even for a pregnant woman. Okay. However, terahertz wave can be absorbed by water. Okay, this property can be a disadvantage. Let's say if terahertz radiation is used under humid conditions. Okay, so humidity will absorb terahertz wave, and hence terahertz systems with higher power or higher sensitivity is required in this case. Okay, and nevertheless, this property can be an advantage, whereby we can distinguish materials with different water content. So if you have a different water content, varying water content, you can distinguish each materials. Okay. And lastly, many chemical and biological materials such as explosives and also cancerous tissue they have a unique spectral fingerprint in the terahertz frequency band. Okay, in other words, they have their own identity with respond to the terahertz radiation. This is good because it can be utilized to distinguish them, okay, for several purposes. For example, we can distinguish between healthy tissues and cancerous tissues based on the spectral fingerprints as well as their water contents. Okay, these are the properties of terahertz wave that you can utilize. So this slide shows some examples of terahertz applications. As mentioned earlier, terahertz imaging can be used in medical diagnosis, in public security, and in industrial inspection. This image, for example, this image, the top image shows the difference between cancerous tissues indicated by red color and healthy tissue, the green color and yellow color. Moreover, terahertz radiation can also be used in astronomy, can also be used in high capacity and high speed communication, which is very important in nowadays IoT applications, right? So these are the properties and examples of terahertz applications. Okay, next we move to the terahertz imaging. Okay, here there are two approaches in order to produce a terahertz image. First, we call it as active imaging, and the second one is the passive imaging. In active terahertz imaging, so basically it requires terahertz source and also terahertz detector. And because of this, we can get a very high sensitivity of output. Okay, this is the image as an example where the active terahertz imaging system is employed. Okay, you have a terahertz source here. This source will radiate to this box on the conveyor, and then underneath the conveyor you have a terahertz detection system. Okay, so you have a terahertz source and also terahertz detector. Then you can produce an active terahertz image. So basically, you need to radiate terahertz wave to the objects that you want to scan. This is active terahertz imaging. So the next one is the passive terahertz imaging. So in this case, no radiation is emitted to the object being scanned, i.e. terahertz source is not required. Okay. So detection system receives terahertz radiation naturally released from the objects combined with reflection from other thermal sources such as sun. So for example here, you have a terahertz camera. Basically, this terahertz camera receives terahertz radiation naturally from the basically from the moving object, from the these moving people. Okay, so because of this, it requires a detection system with high sensitivity so that it can efficiently capture terahertz wave naturally released from these objects. Okay, so this is quite challenging because you require a detection system with high sensitivity, but this is very convenient for non-invasive human screening, as I mentioned earlier. Very convenient, and also This includes a pregnant woman. Okay, so because it's not non-ionizing, and also it cannot harm our body tissue. So this is an example of the image that you can obtain based on this passive terahertz imaging system. The detail is not there, but at least you can see something inside the underneath the jacket of this young man. Okay. This slide, I just want to show some commercialized terahertz imaging systems. Okay. For example, from TerraSense Group Incorporated, they already produce a terahertz camera in which it works at a frequency between 0.1 to 0.7 terahertz. Okay, so this is a portable terahertz camera manufactured by TerraSense Group Incorporated with resolution of 4096 pixels. So it uses 64 times 64 detector array. So here you have some detector array. So the device is 16.5 centimeter times 16.5 centimeter times 4.2 centimeter. So very portable, very small. Okay, but still this is to be used in active imaging system. So it still require terahertz detector, terahertz source in order to get to produce terahertz image. So B, this is the illustration of a plasmonic detector structure fabricated on all-gas gas heterostructure with 2 deck layer on top of gallium arsenide substrate. So this is the main technology that they use, the main rectifier or detector that they use in order to produce this image. Okay, okay. And then C is the terahertz image of a T-shaped metal inside an envelope using a portable terahertz camera and terahertz source developed by TerraSense. Okay, so this is the image that they can produce with this kind of terahertz camera with the help along with the terahertz source. Okay, so this has been commercialized. And another one is for passive imaging, which is operated at between 0.22 to 0.33 terahertz. Okay, so this is from a company named True Vision. So you have a passive terahertz image of a weapon under clothing of a moving person captured using TS4 SC screening camera developed by True Vision. So this is the detector. Very high detector with a high sensitivity. Okay, and in this case, they use a Schottky diode for their rectifier. Okay, as you can see here, this is the same image of the VDI Schottky diode for high frequency application. It can goes up to basically 1 terahertz or 1 to 2 terahertz. But in this case, they use at 0.22 to 0.33 terahertz. So this is the cross section. I mean, this is the same image. This is just an illustration. So as you can see here, based on these two commercialized terahertz imaging system, the diode or the device, semiconductor device that they use, for example, in this case, is a plasmonic detector. So you can see the structure is a bit complicated. We have 2 deck materials, we have a gold gate, and you have to produce this kind of structure. You have to fabricate this kind of structure, similar to this one. This is Schottky diode, but you have to make basically very small Schottky contact here, so that you can get high frequency high frequency cutoff high cutoff frequency. Okay, so you have to basically, in order to produce this, is quite complicated and quite challenging. Okay, so that's why in this project we try to basically introduce a novel nanodiodes. We call it as a cell switching diode, or SSD. So this can be replace the Schottky diode and also the plasmonic detector structure. So basically, SSD is a very simple diode, easy to fabricate, and also have a quite reasonable performance. That I will explain it next slide. So basically, this is the illustration of the SSD structure. So basically, we have a semiconductor, you have insulating trenches, you have a channels, and also you have two terminals, two electrodes. Once you ground it, and then the other electrode you apply voltage. Okay, so this SSD has been demonstrated in various materials. For example, in 2DEC, such as in ALAS heterostructure. You also can use graphene, silicon on insulator, even thin film of zinc oxide on flexible plastic substrates, and also organic semiconductor, polymer PQT12. Okay, so this has been demonstrated. Okay. So SSD actually is being introduced by Professor Emin Song from University of Manchester in 2003. Okay, this is the paper that explain about SSD. Okay, what is the operating principle of SSD? So here, if you see here, first, when there is no applied voltage, when V equal to 0, then there's nothing happen. So basically, you have a depletion region around between the trenches, the insulating trenches and semiconductor. We have a depletion. Okay, it depends on the material. Okay, so when you apply, for in this case, we have a N-type materials, N-type semiconductor materials, and we have a insulating trenches. So when you apply a positive voltage, okay, when V equal to 0, basically, since the surface charge is negative in this case. So when you apply a positive voltage, the channel will be open, because you reduce the depletion region area, the depletion area. When the channel is open, then current can flow through easily. Okay, but if you apply a negative voltage, because the surface charge is negative, so it will increase the depletion region along the channel, so it closes the channel. So basically, when you have a negative voltage applied across this SSD, the channel will be closed because of the depletion region has been increased. So there's no current flowing through. So from this you can get a nice IV characteristic similar to diode. Okay, similar to basically normal diode. Okay, so since it's very simple, and also SSD has a planar structure, so because of this, it has a low parasitic elements, and hence the operations can be performed at high frequency. So This has been demonstrated as terahertz detectors at room temperature. So basically, this is SSD attached with the both the antenna, so becomes rectifying antenna. So we have demonstrate that it can go up to 1.5 terahertz. Okay, and this is the paper that shows all the details of this experiment. Okay, and also the advantage of SSD, since SSD is a planar structure, so the fabrication of SSD require only one lithography step. So it's very simple. If you compare to the plasmonic detector and also the Schottky diode just now, so this is much more simple and also easy to fabricate. In fact, the interconnection layers are not required to connect between SSDs. So we just fabricate SSD in parallel, so we have a SSD array. So easy to integrate with antenna to create rectified antenna. Okay, as on the previous slide, we just basically have an antenna here. We just put SSD in between the feeding point of the antenna. That's it. So it's easy to integrate with antenna to create rectifying antenna that you can use as a rectifier. Okay, and then it also has been simpler, faster, and lower cost compared to other diodes. In fact, it also has been demonstrated as in simple logic OR gate based on SSD. Okay. So this is RD diodes. You have Schottky diode, and you have a PN diode, where you create this kind of non-linear IV characteristic. This is important in order to be used as a rectifier. Then next slide, we will basically try to see the theoretical part, how this diode characteristic, IV characteristic, can be used as a rectifier. Okay, now we are going to basically look at a little bit on the theoretical part of our diode, our NAND diode. Basically, the theoretical part for common nonlinear device. So how this device, this nonlinear IV characteristic, can be used as a rectifier. Okay. So the IV function of a nonlinear device, normally it can be written as I equal to a function with respect to voltage. Current equal to a function with respect to voltage, and this voltage is actually equal to Vout plus Vref, and Vout is the DC bias. Normally RF rectifiers are operated with a DC bias. So this is the DC bias, and then this is the Vref, the RF input, which is equal to typical cos equation. So you have amplitude A times cos omega t. This is the RF input. Okay, and from here, actually you can expand this equation using Taylor series evaluated at the DC bias at V0. So if you expand this using Taylor series, you will get this kind of equation. Okay, it's a very long equation, and this equation basically the first portion, the first part of the equation is correspond to the DC bias. So this I0 equal to the function with respect to the V0, or basically I0 is the current with respect to the DC bias, the V0, and then this F here is actually the nth order derivative of the function with respect to v. Okay, this function with respect to v. So for example, this is the first order of this function of this equation, this second order, third order, and so on. Okay, if you plot this graph, the first derivative is actually the gradient of the or the slope of the graph. Okay, so I copy this into the next slide. Okay. So if you basically substitute VRF equal to A cos omega t, then you end up with this equation after you rearrange the equation. Okay, so this part is actually constant. If you see here, this part is actually constant because this second derivative is constant, and this part also is constant. So this is actually reflects to the rectified DC current. Okay, and this part is not constant because you have a cos omega t, and the mean of this at the end will be 0 because we have a sinusoidal wave. So this portion, because it's constant, this is reflect to the rectified DC current, where the device has rectified the RF input. Okay, so basically the rectified DC current will be equal to amplitude of the RF input to the power of 2 over 4 times the second derivative of the function plus e to the power of 4 over 64 times the fourth derivative, and so on. Okay, so I copy this again into the next slide, the rectified DC current. In order to analyze our device, we only take this portion and we name it as a square law region because the rectified DC voltage, the rectified DC current is proportional, is equal to amplitude to the power of 2. So we call it a square law region. So we only take this portion in our analysis. So in order to get the rectified DC current, DC voltage is basically it's a simple equal to the resistance of the diode times the rectified DC current. So the resistance of the diode is actually 1 over the first derivative of the function. So you have this equation, and then at the end, when you substitute the delta I here, we will get e to the power of 2 over 4 times the second derivative divided by the first derivative. So this is the equations that we are going to analyze. And from here you can see delta V is actually proportional to the second derivative over the first derivative divided by the first derivative, and this actually is parameter, we call it as a curvature coefficient. In order to improve the rectified DC voltage, to increase the rectified DC voltage, we need to increase this portion, the curvature coefficient. Okay, why we only take this portion? Because why we want to analyze only this portion? Because as mentioned earlier, if you need to have if you want to produce a passive imaging, terrace imaging, you require a very sensitive detector, right? So So we try to improve the lower part when you give a smaller input to the detector. So we need to analyze and try to improve this portion. That's why if you see here, if you have a high input, let's say the amplitude of the RF input is more than 1, so this portion become significant. Okay, so we no longer use, we have to take this into consideration. But if you use lower low amplitude, let's say less than 1, let's say 0.5, so this part 0.5 to the power of 4 is become almost 0, so you can ignore this portion. Okay, so that's why you only take this part in order to analyze the rectification performance in square law region. Okay, so in this portion, because we want to improve this part in order to get very high sensitive rectifier to detect small RF input. Okay, so that's why we only take this portion. So this is we call it as a curvature correlation. Okay, this is based on the commercialized Schottky diode. Okay, I hope you understand what I try to explain for this nonlinear device analysis topic. Okay, so we are going to focus on this part. So okay, now we are going to see some results and discussions with respect to the nonlinear device analysis that we have gone through before. Is it match? Is it good or not? So I try to get some results from our previous experiment. So this is the published experiment on the RF characterizations of unipolar rectifiers at zero bias. So I get the results from here, then we try to evaluate based on the nonlinear properties of the SST. Okay, so this is the fabricated arrays of SST. So basically you have a interdigital structure here. Okay, so you have basically on your right and also on your left. Okay, so we basically fabricated a big SSD array. So I think about 1000 on each side, so total about 2000 SSD connected in parallel. So this is the SAM image, this is the AFM image, this is the material that we use. In this case, this is InGaAs in ALAS heterostructure, where you have a 2-deck induced. So okay, so this is the results. So basically, we measured the IV characteristic for the rectifier on the right hand side and also on the rectifier on the left hand side. So it's supposed to be, ideally it's supposed to be the same, because you have similar numbers of SSD connected in parallel for both sides. But I think due to some fabrication error or something like that, so we have a slightly different. I think this is quite good, because from here we can analyze both rectifiers, left and right. Okay, so this is the IV characteristic. As you can see, the rectifier left, you have a higher leakage, higher reverse bias, leakage compared to the right hand side, the red one. Okay, then we use a vector network analyzer where we put different input power. We give different input power to the SSD array. Okay, and we plot the rectified voltage, the output voltage, with respect to the input power. Okay, so from here, as you can see, as expected, we get a similar trend. Similar trend, if you remember, if you compare to the previous slide, similar trend, will be Shopee diode. Okay. See, we have first it follow the scalar region, and then it follow the moving towards the linear region. If you see this, it's also follow the same trend. This is a typical trend for a conventional or normal rectifier. So it's from the scalar region moving to the linear region. Okay, so it's a good sign. And then from here, since we only analyze at linear region and in a scalar region, so I only took these 3 points. I convert it into the normal power value, okay, and plot this graph. Okay, from here, the gradient of this graph is one of the important parameter in the detector. We call it as a responsivity, the voltage responsivity of the detector. So in this case, for the rectifier right, you have about 400 millivolt per milliwatt. Okay, so 400 millivolt per milliwatt, and then the left hand side you have about 314 millivolt per milliwatt. So the basically you try to get as much as possible. So this basically can indicate your sensitivity, the sensitivity of the diode, of the rectifier. Okay, 400 400 and above is considered as a good value. Okay, and then from here, okay, this is the value that based on the experiment. So we basically try to compare with the theoretical that I've mentioned in the previous topic. Okay, so again, I copied again this graph. Okay, I copied again this graph. So this is the rectified voltage versus the input power at zero bias. Remember, this is at zero bias. Okay, and then we know that delta V, the rectified DC voltage, is proportional to the curvature coefficient. So actually we can plot the curvature coefficient with respect to voltage from the IV characteristic. Okay, from the IV characteristic. So we plot this for the right hand side and on the left hand side of the rectifier. So we get this. Okay. Actually from here we know that the rectifier R at zero bias supposed to have higher curvature coefficient compared to rectifier L, right? So at zero bias. So based on our observation, rectifier R will have a higher value than rectifier L in terms of the rectified DC voltage. So that's why from here we get rectifier right produce higher performance compared to the rectifier left. So this is based also you can also tell this based on the theoretical value that I've showed you on the previous topic. Now let's move on to the second publication, second results that we have produced. This is basically some simulation results on curvature coefficient with different geometrical structures of SSD. Okay. Basically, if you have a different geometrical structure of SSD, you will produce different IV characteristic. When you have a different IV characteristic, you will produce a different curvature coefficient characteristic. Okay, this is the structure of SSD. So you have, in this case, we try to look at three parameters: the channel length L, the channel width W, and also the trench width WT. Okay, so we try to vary these parameters. Okay, the results that we obtain first. The first graph is basically when we varies the channel length L. Okay, so you can see you have a different kind of IV characteristic. When you increase the length, you increase the turn on voltage, but you have reduced the leakage, right? And from here we can derive another graph where we plot the curvature coefficient with respect to the voltage. As you can see, the higher the length of the SSD, you can get the higher value of curvature coefficient. In this case, L equal to 1.2 micrometer. The highest speed that you can get is about 25 or 27. About 27. Okay. Same goes to when you varies the width of the trench. Okay, you will get a different IV characteristic, and from here you can derive another graph, which is the curvature coefficient with respect to the voltage. Okay, and the next slide is when you varies the width of the channel. Okay, then you plot another the curvature coefficient against the voltage. And then the last graph, when you change the insulating trenches first with the different property, with different material. You have air, silicon oxide, silicon nitride, and aluminum oxide. Okay, then you have you plot curvature coefficient with respect to the temperature. Okay, what we can get from here actually, this result that we obtain, we can use this to optimize the design of the SSD. The aim is to get high curvature coefficient, as high as possible. Okay, because the high curvature coefficient reflects the high value of delta V, the rectified voltage, DC voltage. Okay, the rectified DC voltage. And also, it's good if you have the high curvature coefficient at zero bias operation, because you can save two things if you have a zero bias operation. First, you does not require extra circuit to basically to give biasing to the device. And the second thing, there will be less noise. If you introduce extra circuit, biasing circuit, then you will introduce noise. So if you remove that extra circuit, then you remove the noise and your rectifier become more sensitive. Okay, so this is the aim. So from here you can basically optimize the design of SSD. Okay, now back to the terahertz imaging, right? Okay, so our recent project related to this is we have some collaboration between UNIMED and also University of Manchester, UK, under the grants, the Newton Oklahoma grant. Okay, so basically our previous terahertz imaging results using single SSD Rectina, right? So basically we have a SSD connected with spiral antenna. Okay, and then we have some basically this is a active imaging, because we have a thermal source. Okay, thermal source, the radiation of the thermal source to the samples. Okay, and the sample was put on the XYZ stage so that it can move, right? And then from here we have a chopper and also log-in amplifier to measure the rectified DC voltage. Okay, then here we move the sample step by step. Okay, so at the end, the first sample that we produce that we use is the pen drive. So when you have a cap on the pen drive. Okay, so basically if you see here the Terahertz image here, you can see the metallic inside the cap, right? This is the metal, the USB connector, right, inside the cap. So you can see the difference there. So basically it can penetrate the plastic of the cap, but the Terahertz wave cannot penetrate the metallic object, which is the USB connector. Okay. And second one is the pen. So this is like a marker. Okay, it's a marker pen. So you can see there's a liquid there. Okay, the blue color indicates the liquid where the terahertz has been absorbed or cannot penetrate. Whereas the cap, which is a plastic cap, the terahertz can penetrate. So then you can produce a nice image of marker pen, where you can see the liquids underneath the cap. Okay, but this is using single SSD retina. So the aim of this project is to fabricate and demonstrate a 64 by 64 sensor array prototype for real-time remote security terahertz imaging. Okay, so we are going to this is still in progress. So we are aiming basically to get some very portable terahertz camera, similar to what almost similar to what's produced by TerraSense just now. Here, go back to this presentation. Something like this. Okay, something like this terahertz camera, but instead of using plasmonic detector, we are using SSD retina. Okay, we are using SSD retina. So we are using this kind of sensor array. Okay. So as a conclusion, first we have mentioned a brief overview on terahertz imaging. Okay, and we have also shown the nonlinear analysis of SSD SRF rectifier. For SSD, the rectification performance can be improved by modifying the dimension of this device to obtain the optimum IV behavior with respect to the curvature coefficient, right? We have also demonstrated the use of SSD as rectifiers to produce terahertz images. So this is acknowledgement to the sponsor fund by Newton and also Unco research grant contributed by MITE Academic Science Malaysia and also the Royal Society. And also enrichment to the Microelectronic and Nanostructure Group, School of Electrical and Electronic Engineering, University of Manchester, and also School of Computing and Engineering Sciences, Durham University, in the United Kingdom. Thank you very much for your attention. So if you have any questions, you can email me. This is my email address, shahrilrizal@unimap.edu.my. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.